So in the third part, okay, the goal is to go ahead and finish up on some of the small details, how we're going to actually go ahead and take care of the blade for the lightsaber itself, and then finally get into the render portions of the project. Okay. In our main model, okay, we know that we're going to go ahead and kind of add a little button kind of as part of the handle. So to do this, we're actually going to go back to one of the original planes, kind of down the center, and then we're going to kind of zoom in where we want it. We're going to draw kind of a basic structure, okay, to go ahead and create kind of the general shape. Okay. And then we'll use a regular 3-point arc, okay, not as a construction line, to go ahead and lay it out. Okay. We can kind of decide how much we want, but the main reason that I'm leaving it down a little bit below the surface is we want to make sure that it's still going to be underneath the entire object. Okay, so that's why I haven't kind of fully dimensioned it. Again, playing around a little bit. You know, you can kind of decide how steep, how heavy you want it to be. Okay? But then we can go ahead, draw another line to go ahead and solidify the shape. Okay. Maybe we want the whole thing to be over a little bit, kind of gapping a little bit into that hole. Keep in mind it's going to be the general surface that we get. Okay. Finish that. Okay. Not dimensioned or anything, but we'll use the Revolve tool to go ahead and select the profile. And then the axis is going to be the horizontal line, and we want to make sure that we're joining the object. That goes ahead and creates kind of the button that we can press on the handle. Okay, and what's left is creating kind of the blade, the lightsaber portion. So to create that, okay, we're going to kind of approach it the same way. Okay, new sketch along the main plane. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and project some geometry on here. Okay, so we know that that's a center line. Okay, so we're actually going to grab kind of that line at least, okay, and then we'll have kind of the projection, okay, on the inside and outside to go ahead and help us make sure that the blade's going to kind of fit the handle. So from here, okay, we can kind of see that's the inside edge, okay, if we had like a transparency turned on. So we're going to basically start there. Okay. We can go out to kind of where that hilt ends. Okay. And then we know that we need to go out from there, okay, quite a ways. Okay. So we know that we want it to be maybe about 5 times as much. So we're going ahead and say 24 inches. Okay. I actually want to make sure that that's at a bit of an angle. Okay, so we're going to take off that perpendicular, I think. Okay, that way we can go ahead and have it at a bit of an angle. Okay, at the very tip, we want to go ahead and create a little bit of a an arc. I think best arc for this one will be another 2-point arc. Okay. We can dimension it. Okay. So it's going to be a 0.1. Okay. We can then use some geometry to go ahead and make sure that it kind of locks in place. Downside of having kind of the supersized system. Okay. And then of course draw a line back from the base, okay, all the way out to kind of the handle. Okay. So we've got our general shape. We can finish that, do a revolve. Okay. So select the axis of rotation, hit OK. And what I forgot to do in there, okay, is we want to make sure that it's a new body. Okay, just because we want to be able to treat the body a little bit different from the rest. Okay, So we now have two bodies. One is the blade, okay, and one is the handle itself. Okay. This allows us to go ahead and proceed forward with applying materials and appearance to the design so we can get into the rendering process. So if you may remember, okay, we can right click to go ahead and apply a physical material or an appearance. I'm going to go ahead and take care of an appearance. Okay. Get that expanded. Okay. And I already went through kind of the materials. Okay. So you've got glass, fabrics, metals. Okay. We'll get back to the metals. But let's go ahead and say that we have a red acrylic. Okay. And it's basically just drag and drop, okay, to go ahead and place that. Now for the handle, I think we know that even though the chopstick may be all plastic, that's treated a bit more like the real deal. And let's say we have a handle made out of chrome. Okay. So in this case, we can apply chrome to the entire object. Okay. But if we go back and kind of look at the real deal, okay, a lot of it is actually kind of a black material. Okay. So here we can go ahead and say that it's going to be black chrome. Okay. And we can then apply to faces rather than the entire bodies. Okay. So in this case, we can apply kind of the regular chrome to a couple of select locations. Okay. Okay. And that'll go ahead and kind of affect kind of the general design. Okay. So what's left is, now that our model is complete, okay, the rendering within Fusion 360 is a CAD tool, kind of ends there. Okay. But to go ahead and make it look more realistic, this is where we make sure that we save our work. Okay. And then we go into render. And here is where we start looking at some of the functions within the rendering commands. So in this case, we know that we want to set up kind of a scene. Okay. So in doing this, okay, we've got kind of a bland background. So within Fusion 360, there's a number of environments that we can apply within their library. And let's go ahead, and some of them you'll need to download, others are already going to be available. Okay. I had already downloaded the dry lake, okay? So we can apply that. Okay? Spend some time kind of figuring out what view you want of your object. Okay? We can minimize this a little bit. Okay? Maybe you want to rotate it around, okay? But it's a full 360-degree kind of environment that they've provided us with. Okay? And of course, within the scenes, we've got some other settings. This gets a bit more into photography concepts about what's the focal distance, you know, how's it going to look, perspectives, things like that. Okay. We can decide more advanced features that we're going to kind of leave off point. Okay. But once we've got kind of the general object laid out, okay, this is where we go ahead and one, save frequently, and then we will go ahead and tell it to go ahead and do the in-canvas rendering. Okay? And this is where it starts kind of running light, like it's actually calculating what light would do if it hit the transparent plastic versus the full chromes. Now, low quality as it starts off, but as it runs, it gets more and more detail, more and more things like the reflections of the terrain. Okay? So kind of cool how this can work. Different plastics, of course, have different reflections, different behaviors. Chrome, which is known to be extremely reflective, almost mirror-like, definitely is going to take a little while to let it fully render. And we can certainly increase the quality that we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and up this, okay? And we're going to have to let it render, okay? But in a few minutes, and I'll let it do a quick time lapse, we'll see what it finally looks like. Alright, so now that the rendering's done, you can notice some of the statistics in it. It took about 4 minutes for that to go ahead and render. Keep in mind, this is rendering as a single frame, okay? So imagine what happens when you're having to do thousands of these for an animated movie, for you know, even just a short commercial, 30 frames per second, it starts adding up. That's why they're going to use supercomputers. This is on a fairly powerful desktop computer, but this is a kind of finished product. You've put the detail into the model, you've chosen the materials, you've got an idea of kind of what would be used and the reflections that would behave with this. And this is not what it would look like perfectly in real life, but it does give you a very solid start of what you're capable of doing. And when we think about Fusion 360 or even Inventor or other CAD software we may use, we're not expecting it to create picture perfect imagery, but this is a good start when you're trying to sell a product and convince people that this is what they need. So hopefully you've learned some different tips throughout this series, from modeling the shapes using geometry like polygons to go ahead and help set locations, to the use of constraints and dimensions, parametric modeling, to how you can go ahead and select the materials and the appearance that you want before you go ahead and create a rendered image of your final product. So again, there's definitely a lot of power within Fusion 360, and as the day may say, may the force be with you.